Here we are with part 3, the climax, which, as you guys know from when we talked about our elements of fiction, the climax is like the highest point of interest, where you are the most involved and tense and on the edge of your seat to find out what is going to happen to the character in the next part. So I put on here what events led to the climax. This is kind of like when we do those plot diagrams where you kind of say like, first this happens and this happens. And I put that you can list them in bullet points. So Charlie gets braces, Charlie's nervous, Charlie eats broccoli, Charlie gets broccoli in their teeth. And this is where I put Lily starts picking on her. Again, this is where you kind of have to plan your story ahead, because when I left off on the conflict, you didn't know anything about Lily. Lily comes in this section. Okay, so how will the reader know this is the climax? Because this is the turning point and everything that happens after is different. So leading up to the climax, Lily's worried about her braces and what people think. After the climax happens, she's no longer worried. So this is the climax of my story. And again, same directions here, 10 sentences about, okay, roughly, I'm not gonna take off points if you don't have exactly 10 sentences, but I'm just kind of trying to get you to write more. Okay, because this is supposed to be a full and complete story. Every day that you look at it, technically, I should be able to go from here to here to here, and it makes sense as one logical story. All right, so I said here that Charlie tried to keep the tears out of her eyes, but it was no use. Lily wouldn't stop laughing and pointing at her. Charlie knew if Lily stopped laughing, everyone else would too, because Lily was top dog at their school. She stood up, but she was so nervous her hands were shaking like leaves. She accidentally knocked Lily's tray out of her hands as she stepped up. The tray fell on the floor with a loud splat. Everyone got quiet, but Lily looked livid. She balled her fist up and pulled her arm back, just like she was about to punch Charlie in the face. Again, I circled all the different types of figure language that I did. All right, I said Lily looked livid. That is alliteration. I'm repeating that L sound. The tray fell with a loud splat. That's onomatopoeia. The idiom that I used was that Lily was the top dog. Everyone knows that that phrase actually means that she is the, the boss or the big important person at school. And then I have a simile here too. Let's see, somewhere. Her hands were shaking like leaves. So I'm comparing her hands shaking to when leaves like blow in the breeze. So those are my figurative language. But remember, you only have to have 2. But this is where, the climax is like, what's going to happen? Lily has just drawn her fist back and she's standing there, with her fist. And you aren't really sure, is she going to punch Lily? Is the teacher going to come over and tell them to stop? Or is Lily going to run away? What's going to happen? You don't know the next part of the story. That's what I want you to do, is come up with this situation where if you're looking at it from, like a diagram, the climax is like the highest point of interest, where your story is at the peak of this excitement or the suspense.